Hello, I'm Nathan Greenberg, founder of Ivy League Mentors Prep. And if you want to know why I'm holding a hamburger, stay tuned. Now let's take a close look at this. Honestly, I would say not that bad. If you open it up, there's some tomato and there's some onions and lettuce. It looks okay. But would you rather eat this or would you rather eat this? I'm sorry, but personally, I'm going to go with this one. Now you may be thinking, what was that all about? Well, the point is to illustrate something really important, which is that when you are writing your college application, how you present yourself matters a lot. Now, we had two identical burgers here, the same beef, the same bread, the same tomatoes, and the same lettuce, but one of them looked a whole lot better than the other one. And the same thing is true of applicants. You can have two equally qualified applicants, but if one of them has a much stronger application, that applicant is going to get chosen over the one that has the worst application. So what makes a good application? As I mentioned before, the key word is story. You are telling a story, and a story requires that things go together well. So ideally, what we are looking for is intersection between your academics, your extracurriculars, and your plans for the future. If those three things can come together in a meaningful way, then you are going to have a great application. Now, in our previous video, we talked about achieving a level of excellence in a few key areas, and I'd like to get back to that right now. Ideally, by the time you hit your senior year, you will already know the way you want to market yourselves to college. You know who you are and what you want to be. But even if you haven't reached that point, it's not too late to look back and put the pieces together. Now, in some cases, piecing together a story can be really easy. Let's take a look at one of those examples. Imagine that you are a STEM person all the way through. You took AP Bio and you got a 5. You took AP Chem and AP Physics, you got a 5 in those also. Meanwhile, you had a role helping out a doctor at a local hospital. Well, in this case, it's pretty easy to put together the third leg of the triangle. What do you want to do in college? Well, maybe you want to major in biomedicine, and maybe your ultimate plan is to become a doctor yourself. Makes a lot of sense. But in some cases, it's not going to be that straightforward. You might need to think a little bit more creatively. Now let's imagine a slightly different situation. You are still a STEM person. You did well in AP Bio. You really liked that class. But at the same time, you're also the kind of person who's interested in economics and government. Maybe you got a 5 in AP Econ. And maybe your extracurriculars are more oriented towards that. Now, we might say, how are we going to get these things to line up? But often there is a way to incorporate these diverse elements and weave them together into a concise story. So maybe instead of majoring in biomedicine or something like this student would be better off trying to major in a subject like public health. That's something that incorporates a little bit of health and science and biology, but it also incorporates things like government and politics. And if we combine those together, we can actually make a very compelling application for a student who is thinking about pursuing a major in something like public health. So, now that we've got the basics of our story, let's talk about how to craft it a little bit more. Now, we just discussed an example. A student who was good at AP Bio but also had this interest in government and human rights, and combine them together to create a story of interest in public health. Let's consider these basic elements the bread and meat of your hamburger. But just bread and meat alone is not always going to make the most delicious hamburger. Sometimes you want to add some lettuce and some cheese on top of that. So, looking back, it's not too late to add to your story or to your proverbial burger by throwing some cheese on top. What do I mean? Well, let's say that you are entering senior year, and as I said before, you've been in the debate club, you've been in Model UN, you've been really active there, but at the same time you also have a strong biology background. Well, what would tie those together more? Maybe this would be a good time for us to get an internship at a local clinic that provides health services for low-income families. Now we have something that's holding it all together, and it's going to make that story just a little bit more compelling overall. So now that we've got some cheese for the top of our burger, I'd like to talk about the last step, how to actually assemble that, or in other words, how to write your college applications. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into the nitty-gritty of this right now because I have a lot of other resources devoted to this topic already. In fact, I would encourage you right now to visit our website, Ivy League Mentors Prep. There's a link in the comments, so check it out. There's a lot of great resources about how to write a good college application, but I would like to illustrate a few more points using this hamburger analogy. The first point is, if you were going to invite some people over for a dinner party, you would not wait until the last minute to start cooking. The same thing is true of your college application essays. I highly encourage you to begin them the summer before you start your senior year. Now, you might think this seems a bit excessive because most regular decision applications are not due until around the new year, several months into your senior year, but I can promise you you're going to thank yourself later because senior year is very busy and your grades matter a lot, so you don't want to be worrying about college applications as that year unfolds. A second key point is that you might want to consider getting help. In fact, if you have the means, I highly recommend it. Now, let's say that you have the raw ingredients that we talked about before. You have your bun, AP Bio. You have your meat, which is your experience in Model UN and your experience on the debate club. And you've got some cheese on top now, which was your internship at this clinic that provides health services to low-income families. But a pro chef can prepare that burger a lot better than you're ever going to be able to do it on your own. So if you can get help, you're going to have a much better application in the long run. Now, another point illustrated by this whole burger metaphor is that the college application process is a little bit subjective. And the same thing, of course, is true with food. Now, you might really love mushrooms, and I personally really love mushrooms, and I would love to have some mushrooms on my burger, but not everybody's into mushrooms. Some people are going to see that burger with mushrooms, and they're going to think, ew, that is gross. I don't want any part of that. Schools are a little bit the same way. All right, and so the important thing here is to apply to many different schools because some schools might like what you're advertising and other schools might not. And that's not always something that you know until you try. So I would say that as a minimum, applying to at least 10 schools would be good. And as an upper limit, 15 or even 20 is not completely excessive. I know that might sound like a lot, but it gets much easier. Once you apply to 10, applying to the next 5 is not much harder because you can recycle a lot of the material. However, I do want to make a note about that too. Nobody likes recycled food and nobody likes recycled applications. Just as a restaurant wouldn't be able to take this burger and say, sorry, another customer refused it, do you want it? Schools don't like it when they can sense that you're serving up the same application essay. So it's important to make sure that your essays are adapted to specific schools. Now, that's not always going to be possible with something like a common application personal statement. But for schools that have supplements that ask you about things like, why do you want to go to this university? It's important to connect your interest to specific opportunities that that school is offering. Anyways, that's the key point for today, crafting your story. I hope this video has been useful to you. If it was, please click like and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me remind you that there are a number of free resources available for you at our website, Ivy League Mentors Prep. Again, there's going to be a link to that in the comments. Thanks again for watching and good luck. Not bad.